I gifted my stepdaughter an apartment for graduation, then she banned me from her party for her mom, so I took everything back. My name's Adriana, and I'm a 45-year-old dentist with a thriving practice. 10 years ago, I made a choice that completely altered the course of my life. I married Joel, an incredible man who came with a 12-year-old daughter from his previous marriage. At the time, I owned a spacious apartment with more than enough room, so it only made sense for them to move in with me after the wedding. April, my stepdaughter, didn't try to hide how she felt about the arrangement. From the very start, she made it painfully clear that she wasn't thrilled with her father's decision. "Dad," she'd say, making sure I was within earshot, "can you tell your wife that I'm not hungry?" The way she emphasized your wife felt like a dagger every single time. The first few months were a war zone. Doors slammed, silent treatments became the norm, and her tantrums were dramatic enough to make the neighbors peek through their curtains. But I wasn't about to engage in a battle with a child. Instead of punishing her or demanding respect, I took a different route. One evening, after yet another one of her outbursts, I walked up to her bedroom door and knocked gently. "April," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I'm not here to take your mother's place. I just hope we can figure out our own way to get along." She didn't say a word that night, but something shifted after that conversation. From then on, I approached her differently, not as a misbehaving child who needed discipline, but as a person with her own thoughts and feelings. When she threw sarcastic remarks my way, I responded calmly and rationally. If she preferred talking to Joel instead of me, I let it slide. Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. As I flipped pancakes in the kitchen, she turned to her dad and said, "Adriana's pancakes actually smell good." It wasn't exactly a compliment, and it definitely wasn't directed at me, but it was the first time she acknowledged anything I did in a remotely positive way. 2 years into our marriage, things started to shift. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change, more like ice thawing little by little. April started speaking to me directly, first with small, practical questions, then with actual conversations. I made sure she felt included in everything: family vacations, weekend outings, even our goofy movie nights at home. Then, one day, she caught me completely off guard. "Adriana," she said, for the first time without an ounce of bitterness, "can I come with you and Dad to the beach house this summer?" But the biggest change came when her mother, Tessa, remarried. With her own new life to focus on, Tessa stopped making the offhand comments that used to fuel April's resentment toward me. The tearful phone calls that once ended in frustration became shorter, more casual. "Mom's different now," April said one evening while we were cooking dinner together. "She seems happier. I guess everyone deserves a second shot at happiness, right?" It felt like a peace offering, and I accepted it wholeheartedly. As I watched her stir the pasta sauce, a recipe we had learned together, I realized we had finally become something close to a real family. When April got accepted to college, there was no question I helped with the tuition. Joel and I had talked about it, and after everything we'd been through, it felt like the natural thing to do. We had come a long way from slammed doors and icy silence. The night before she left for school, we sat on her bed, surrounded by half-packed boxes and piles of clothes. I had something important to say. "April," I started, "my brother David runs that marketing firm downtown. When you graduate, if you're interested, I'd be happy to help you land a position there. It's a great place to start your career." She didn't hesitate. She just threw her arms around me, none of that stiff, awkward side hug nonsense from years before. "Really? That would be amazing, Adriana. Thank you." During her college years, we didn't see her as often as we wanted. She came home for the holidays, the occasional weekend, but that's just how it goes. When she did visit, I made sure to cook all her favorites: my lasagna, which she finally admitted was better than her mom's, and the chocolate chip cookies she used to sneak from the kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. "So, how's the business management program?" I'd ask over dinner. "Still enjoying Professor Turner's class?" Her face would light up as she talked about her studies, her internships, her goals for the future. Sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, she'd casually mention her mom. "I stopped by Mom's last weekend," she'd say, then quickly change the subject. "Oh, but you have to see this project I'm working on for my marketing class." I never pried when she pivoted the conversation like that. Why would I? It was perfectly natural for her to spend time with her mother. Even Joel agreed there was no point in making it an issue. Over time, we fell into a comfortable rhythm whenever she was home. April would tell us about her classes, her friends, her part-time job at the campus coffee shop. I'd make her favorite meals, and we'd sit around the dining table, laughing and sharing stories, just like we used to. Then one night, during dinner, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "You know," she mused, "my roommate thinks I'm ridiculously lucky to have such a cool stepmom. She's always complaining about hers. She probably had no idea how much that meant to me. After years of struggling to connect, hearing her casually call me cool felt like winning a gold medal. Under the table, Joel reached for my hand, giving it a little squeeze. I knew he was thinking the same thing. One evening, after dinner, she lingered in the kitchen longer than usual. Fidgeting with a dish towel, she glanced at me. "Adriana," she said hesitantly, "thanks for everything. Not just college, but everything. Funny how time sneaks up on you. One day, you're helping your stepdaughter settle into her dorm, and before you know it, she's walking across the stage in a cap and gown, diploma in hand." As I watched her accept her degree, my fingers brushed against the apartment key in my purse, the one waiting to change her life. The apartment had once belonged to my grandmother. It wasn't a grand place, just a cozy two-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, but for a young professional starting out, it was perfect. I had been renting it out for years, but now, I had other plans. April sat in the back seat, chatting away, her excitement bubbling over as she talked about her friends' post-graduation plans. "Sarah's moving to Chicago, and Mike landed that job in Boston. It's crazy how everyone's scattering across the country," she said, shaking her head. I exchanged a glance with Joel, both of us smiling knowingly. She had no idea she wouldn't have to go anywhere. By the time we got home, I could barely contain my excitement. I had asked the last tenants to move out a month ago and had the place professionally cleaned and repainted. Everything was set. Once we were settled in the living room, I took a deep breath. "April," I said, my hand shaking slightly as I reached into my pocket, "I have something for you." She turned to me, curiosity flickering in her eyes as I held out a small set of keys. A silver keychain dangled from the ring, her initials engraved neatly on the surface. "What's this?" she asked, turning the keys over in her hand, her expression puzzled. I smiled. "An apartment," I said simply. "My grandmother's old place. It's yours now." The room fell into stunned silence. April stared down at the keys, then up at me, then back at the keys again. Joel, for his part, had his mouth slightly open, completely caught off guard. Are you serious?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Completely serious. You're stepping into adulthood, starting your career, and eventually, you'll want a place of your own, maybe even a family someday. Now you have a home to begin that journey." I pulled out my phone, flipping to the photos. "It's on Cedar Street, number 542. Everything's move-in ready whenever you are." April's eyes filled with tears. In the next second, she lunged forward, wrapping her arms around my neck in a fierce embrace, the kind she hadn't given me since she was little. "Adriana, I can't believe this. Thank you." Joel pulled me into a tight hug next, his voice thick with emotion as he whispered, "I love you. You're amazing, you know that?" April was already grabbing her coat, bouncing on her feet. "Can I go see it right now?" I laughed, repeating the address to make sure she had it right. "Of course. The keys work for both the building entrance and the apartment door. Take your time exploring. I think I'll stay there tonight," she said eagerly. "Is that okay? I want to get a feel for my new home." Joel and I watched as she dashed out, practically glowing with excitement. After she left, we curled up on the couch together, the house feeling oddly quiet without her energy filling the space. "Just think," I murmured, resting my head on his shoulder, "someday she'll meet someone special, and they'll make that apartment their first home together." Joel pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "And then we'll be grandparents," he said, grinning, "and you'll spoil our grandkids just like you've spoiled our daughter." Our daughter. The word settled deep in my heart, warm and full. After everything, the struggles, the tears, the slow, careful steps toward trust, April had truly become my daughter in every way that mattered. The next morning, I was enjoying my day off, still basking in the joy of the night before, when the front door burst open with a bang so loud it made me jump. "Tessa!" April's mother stormed inside like a hurricane, her face twisted in fury. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice shaking with rage. "Who do you think you are?" I shot up from the couch, my pulse hammering. "Tessa, what's wrong?" "Don't play dumb with me," she spat. "April told me about your little gift, an entire apartment? Really?" She practically choked on the words. "You think you can buy my daughter's love?" The accusation hit like a slap across the face. "That's not what this is about," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. "The apartment belonged to my grandmother." "Oh, how convenient," Tessa snapped, cutting me off. She was pacing the room like a caged animal, her eyes burning. "You just happened to have a spare apartment lying around, and you just had to give it to my daughter. You knew I could never match a gift like that." "Tessa, please," I said, raising my hands in a placating gesture. "I love April. She's like a daughter to me. I just wanted to help her start her adult life." "Love her? Tessa let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You've been trying to replace me since day one. First, the fancy vacations. Then, paying for her college. And now this? She took a step toward me, her hand lifting slightly, and before I could even process what was happening, Joel was there. His grip closed around her wrist, his voice firm but even. That's enough, he said. You need to leave. Now. Tessa wrenched her arm free, her face livid. This isn't over, Adriana. Her voice dripped with venom. You think you're so generous, so perfect, but you can't buy a mother's love. April will always be my daughter. Not yours. No matter how many apartments you throw at her. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood there, frozen, my whole body trembling. Joel reached for me, trying to pull me into his arms, but I couldn't move. My mind was racing, her words echoing over and over. Had I really been trying to buy April's love all these years? Was that what people thought? Joel spoke softly. She's wrong. But there was something in his voice. A hesitation. A sliver of doubt. You know she's wrong, right? He asked. I nodded. But it felt mechanical, hollow. Because deep down, a small, insidious part of me wondered. What if she wasn't? The next morning, April showed up at the door. April looked like she hadn't slept. She shuffled into the kitchen as I brewed coffee, her eyes barely meeting mine. April, about yesterday, I started, but she cut me off, her voice flat. I don't want to talk about it. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into her old room. I stood there, the coffee pot still in my hands, listening to the soft click of her door shutting. It felt final somehow, like a judge's gavel slamming down. Throughout the day, I could hear her fingers tapping against her phone screen, the rhythmic clicking filling the quiet house. She was texting someone, her mother, I assumed. When she finally emerged for dinner, the silence between us had thickened into something heavier. She pushed her food around her plate, her phone still clutched in her left hand like a lifeline. Then, out of nowhere, she announced, I'm throwing a graduation party at Lon next weekend. Relief washed over me. Finally, a chance to move past this. That's wonderful. I can help plan everything. Lon is expensive, but we can. No. Her voice was sharp as broken glass. My real mother is paying for it. My stomach clenched. Real mother. Not just mom or mother, but real, as if she were deliberately drawing a line between us. That night, I told Joel about the conversation. The way she said real mother, it was like she was trying to hurt me. You're reading too much into this, he said, patting my hand absently. She's just stressed about everything that's happened. You know how Tessa can get. But I wasn't reading too much into it. I couldn't be. Over the next few days, I came home from work to the sound of April's voice floating down the hallway, cheerful and animated. The party is going to be amazing, she gushed to someone. Mom's rented out the whole restaurant, yes, the fancy French one downtown. I stood in the hallway, keys still in hand, listening as she made plan after plan. She called her cousins, her college friends, even some of our neighbors. But day after day, no invitation came my way. Each new person she invited felt like another brick in a wall being built between us. A wall I hadn't even seen coming until it was almost complete. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, her voice hushed, excited. Everything's arranged, the menu, the decorations, the guest list. She laughed at something the other person said, and the sound twisted in my chest like a knife. It was the same laugh she used to share with me when we stayed up late watching movies, when we cooked together, when I had been her safe place. After 2 days of this silent torture, I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone, acting like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't been systematically inviting everyone except me to her graduation party. April, I said, my voice shakier than I intended. Can we talk about the party? I haven't heard any details yet. What time should we? You're not coming. The words hit like ice water. I blinked. What? It came out as barely a whisper. Now she looked up, and for the first time, I barely recognized the expression on her face. Her eyes were cold. Her mouth twisted into a smile I had never seen before. You heard me. You're not invited. I gripped the counter to steady myself. April, what's going on? Is this about what happened with your mother? My real mother, she corrected, emphasizing each word like a weapon. And yes, she doesn't want you there. Neither do I. I swallowed hard. I don't understand. My legs suddenly felt weak, and I pulled out a chair, lowering myself into it. If this is about the apartment. She let out a harsh laugh, sharp and cruel. Oh, I'm keeping the apartment. Who turns down a free place to live? Consider it payment for all the years I had to put up with you and your perfect stepmom act. The room seemed to spin. Put up with me? My voice cracked. April, what are you talking about? Have you been suffering all this time? She rolled her eyes. God, you really don't get it, do you? She stood up, shoving her chair back with a screech against the tile. I never loved you. You were just the woman who made sure my parents could never get back together. If you hadn't shown up, they might have worked things out. We could have been a real family again. Each word felt like a physical blow. I thought of all the nights I had stayed up helping her with homework. All the times I had held her when she cried over heartbreak. All the mother-daughter moments I thought we had shared. Real family? My voice wavered. What do you think we've been for the past 10 years? The vacations, the college tuition. She scoffed. Throwing money around, that's your solution to everything, isn't it? She sneered, and I almost didn't recognize her. Fancy trips, expensive gifts, paying for college and now an apartment? Did you think you could just buy yourself a daughter? My throat tightened. That's not what I was trying to do. I could feel the tears, hot and stinging, but I forced them back. I did those things because I love you. Because I thought we were family. Family? She laughed again, that horrible, mocking laugh. My mom is my family. Dad is my family. You're just the woman who came along and ruined everything. And now you're trying to buy my love with an apartment. I couldn't breathe. She checked her phone, then glanced at me. The party's Sunday. 7 o'clock. She turned toward her room. Don't show up. You're not welcome. The door slammed behind her so hard the photos on the wall rattled. Photos of us at her high school graduation, at Christmas, at the beach. Moments I had treasured. Moments that now felt like elaborate lies. The coffee in my mug had long since gone cold, but I couldn't bring myself to dump it out. It felt like dumping out the last 10 years of my life. That evening, I sat in the kitchen, hands shaking, rehearsing how I would tell Joel. When he finally walked through the door, the story spilled out between sobs I couldn't control. I'll talk to her, he said immediately, heading straight for April's room without even taking off his coat. I stayed at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around the cold coffee mug, waiting. The minutes dragged like hours. When Joel finally emerged, I looked up, searching for reassurance, for understanding, for anything to make this nightmare stop. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. Adriana. He hesitated. My heart sank before he even finished speaking. April has some valid points. Maybe it would be better if you didn't come to the party. The world stopped spinning. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of being a mother to April. And in one moment, it all became crystal clear. I had been living a lie. You're still going? My voice sounded distant, unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. Of course. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like I was stupid for even asking. She's my daughter. I just nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. Over the next few days, I played the part. The perfect, understanding wife. The woman who wasn't devastated. The woman who didn't feel like her entire life had just been ripped out from under her. But inside, something was breaking. And I wasn't sure it could ever be fixed.